Emma sat in her wheelchair near the far corner of the grand ballroom, her slender fingers nervously tracing the satin folds of her pale blue dress. The chandeliers above glittered like captured stars, their light dancing across marble floors where elegant couples twirled in harmony with the music. Laughter echoed, champagne glasses clinked, and expensive perfumes mingled in the air, but none of it reached her. She was present in body, but absent in spirit, as though invisible to everyone in the room. She was the daughter of Richard Harlow, one of the city's most powerful CEOs. His presence dominated the party. Men leaned close to shake his hand, women fluttered compliments his way, and journalists waited eagerly for sound bites. He was a man with influence, money, and authority. And yet, the one thing he could not command was the way people treated his daughter. Emma hadn't always been confined to her chair. Once, she had danced across floors like these, her laughter brighter than the chandeliers themselves. But a tragic accident 2 years ago had left her paralyzed from the waist down. Since then, pity had become her shadow, and silence her most frequent companion. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight she had begged her father to let her attend one of his grand events. She had imagined she might feel normal again, even if just for a night. But now, watching from the sidelines as men escorted their partners to the dance floor and women spun with grace, her hope withered. She wasn't treated like a young woman eager for life, for love, for laughter. She was treated like a delicate ornament that belonged in the corner, noticed but never touched. Her father glanced at her from across the room every so often. His sharp suit and commanding presence never faltered, but in his eyes lingered a quiet guilt. He knew she was unhappy. He knew she longed for connection, but he didn't know how to fix what the world had broken. Emma lowered her eyes, pretending to be engrossed with her phone just to escape the sting of being overlooked. She scrolled aimlessly, but her ears picked up fragments of nearby conversation. "She's so beautiful," whispered one woman, "but such a tragedy, imagine a girl like her, confined like that." "Such a shame," a man added casually. "What man would ever, you know?" He left the sentence unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Emma swallowed hard, forcing herself not to cry. She had heard it all before, whispers of pity, assumptions about her worth, judgments about her future. She wasn't deaf to them, but she had learned to act as though she was. Still, each word carved deeper wounds into her heart. Across the room, Daniel adjusted his tie uncomfortably. He wasn't used to places like this, gold-trimmed halls, designer gowns, a sea of people who seemed to have stepped out of glossy magazines. He was here only because of a small business deal. His construction company had recently secured a partnership with Harlow Enterprises, and tonight was his first real step into the corporate world. At his side was his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. She had insisted on coming along after he promised it would be like a princess party. Her hair was tied in bouncing curls, and she wore her favorite little white dress, a plastic tiara tilted slightly on her head. She was his everything, the reason he worked long hours, the reason he kept going after losing his wife years ago. Daniel tried to focus on the business conversations, but his eyes kept drifting. He noticed her, Emma, in the corner. Something about the way she sat, her smile half forced, her gaze fixed longingly on the dance floor, tugged at him. He didn't see the chair first. He saw the loneliness. "Daddy?" Lily tugged at his sleeve, her big brown eyes curious. "Why is that pretty lady sitting all by herself?" Daniel crouched down so they were eye level. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people don't see what's right in front of them." "But you see her," Lily said with the innocent certainty only a child could have. Her words hit him like a lightning strike. Yes, he did see her, not the chair, not the tragedy others whispered about. He saw a young woman who wanted to belong, who deserved to be noticed. He glanced back at Emma. She was trying to mask her hurt, but the subtle quiver of her lips gave her away. He felt an ache in his chest, a pull he couldn't ignore. For years he had told himself to keep his head down, focus on work, raise his daughter, and not complicate his life further. But now, standing in this gilded ballroom, he realized something. Kindness was never a complication. "Daddy," Lily whispered, her voice filled with urgency, "go talk to her." He hesitated. This wasn't his world. He was just a single dad in a simple suit surrounded by billionaires and heirs. What if people laughed? What if Emma rejected him? But then he looked back at Lily's innocent face, filled with certainty, and thought of Emma's lonely eyes. He straightened his shoulders. Daniel made his way across the room. The crowd parted in surprise. Who was this man approaching the CEO's daughter? Murmurs followed him, curious and mocking alike. But he didn't stop. Each step felt heavier, but his resolve grew stronger. Emma looked up in surprise when she realized someone was walking straight toward her. For a second, she thought he must be heading to someone behind her. Nobody ever came to her first. But then he stopped right in front of her, his warm brown eyes meeting hers with no hesitation, no pity, only sincerity. "Hi," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "I'm Daniel." Emma blinked, startled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. People rarely introduced themselves to her anymore, not without awkwardness. Daniel smiled softly, bending slightly so he was at her level. "I couldn't help but notice that you've been sitting here all night, and I was wondering," he paused, his eyes kind and unwavering, "can I be your date?" The words struck her like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Nobody had ever asked her that since the accident. Nobody had ever dared. Her heart raced. Did he mean it? Or was this some cruel joke? But when she looked into his eyes, all she saw was truth. And for the first time in 2 years, Emma felt seen. The room stilled. The music still played, but it was as if the violins had softened, waiting for Emma's answer. Conversations died mid-sentence. Eyes that had been blind to her all evening now stared, wide and curious, as if they had just realized she existed. Emma's heart thundered in her chest. She blinked rapidly, unsure if she had heard him right. "Can I be your date?" The words replayed in her mind, fragile and unbelievable. For so long she had been ignored, pushed to the edges, hidden behind polite pity. And now here was a stranger, no, not just a stranger, but a man with warm eyes and a steady voice, offering her something she thought she would never hear again. Her throat felt tight. Are you serious?" The words came out small, almost a whisper, as if she were afraid that speaking too loudly would shatter the moment. Daniel's lips curved into a calm, reassuring smile. "I don't say things I do mean." He extended his hand, not with hesitation, not with pity, but with the kind of respect men offer to women they truly see. "May I?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in a crimson gown whispered sharply to her companion, "What on earth is he doing?" A suited man chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "He's wasting his time. She can't even dance." But their words, meant to sting, didn't matter. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't hearing the voices around her. She was focused only on him. Her fingers trembled as she placed them in his. His hand was warm, solid, steadying. He didn't flinch when he touched her, didn't glance down at the chair as if it defined her. His eyes stayed locked on hers, and she felt something bloom in her chest, something long buried: hope. Daniel gently maneuvered her chair forward. The wheels rolled smoothly over the polished floor as he guided her toward the center of the ballroom. All eyes followed. Some glared with disbelief, others widened with curiosity, and a few softened with quiet admiration. Emma felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on her, but for once she didn't shrink from it. She let Daniel lead. When they reached the middle, he leaned closer, his voice low so only she could hear. "I can't promise we'll spin like the others," he said, his tone filled with gentle humor, "but I can promise you won't feel invisible with me." Something in her broke then, something hard and painful that had been caging her for so long. Her lips quivered and then, slowly, they curved upward. "That's more than I ever dreamed," she whispered. The orchestra swelled into a waltz. Daniel placed one hand lightly on hers, the other guiding the chair with careful grace. Together, they began to move. not in the traditional sense of twirling and spinning, but in a rhythm uniquely their own. His footsteps matched to the glide of her chair, his presence anchoring her as if they were two halves of the same movement. Whispers filled the air. Look at them. What's he doing? Is this some kind of stunt? But over those voices rose another sound, soft applause. Someone touched by the sight clapped timidly, then another joined, and another. Within moments, the ballroom that had once ignored her was watching with reverence. Emma's eyes shimmered with tears, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from joy, pure, unfiltered joy. She felt alive again. She felt seen. She laughed softly, the sound so sweet and unexpected that Daniel's chest tightened with emotion. From the edge of the room, a small voice rang out clear as a bell. "Daddy," dancing with the princess. It was Lily, clapping with delight, her tiara tilted and her eyes shining with pride. The crowd chuckled softly, some even smiling warmly at the innocence of the child. Emma's laughter bubbled out fully then, light and unrestrained, and Daniel found himself grinning in response. Richard Harlow, the great CEO, stood frozen near the champagne table. For years, he had tried to shield Emma from the cruelty of the world, but in doing so, he had also kept her hidden. Tonight, for the first time, someone had walked past the walls of her wheelchair and straight into her heart. His throat tightened with a mixture of gratitude and regret. He realized that all his money, all his influence, could never give his daughter what this ordinary man had just given her: dignity, courage, and hope. The dance continued, slow and imperfect, yet to Emma it was the most beautiful dance she had ever known. She looked up at Daniel, her voice trembling with emotion. Why did you ask me?" He met her gaze, steady and true. "Because when I saw you sitting there, I didn't see a chair. I saw someone who deserved to be asked. Someone who deserved to feel like the most important person in the room." Her breath caught. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that since the accident. People always addressed her with caution, with sympathy, never with honesty. And here he was, a man she had just met, giving her back a piece of herself she thought was gone forever. The music faded. Daniel guided her back toward the edge of the floor, but this time she wasn't alone. Applause broke out, louder this time, echoing off the golden walls. People weren't just watching anymore, they were acknowledging. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. When they stopped, Emma looked at him with shining eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. He smiled, brushing it off with gentle humor. "Don't thank me yet. I still owe you another dance." She laughed again, the sound like a melody that filled the cracks of her heart. Lily ran up to them, her little hands clapping furiously. "Daddy, you really dance with a princess. Can I be next?" Emma chuckled, leaning down slightly. "Only if you promise not to outshine me," she teased. Lily giggled, and Daniel watched the two of them with a warmth that spread through his chest. He hadn't expected tonight to change anything. But now, as he looked at Emma, he realized that sometimes the most unexpected choices could alter the course of more than one life. Richard Harlow approached slowly, his usually stern face softened. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, his voice low but sincere. Daniel shook his head. "Don't thank me, sir. I just asked a question." But Emma knew better. That question, "Can I be your date?" had changed everything. As the night wore on, she no longer sat alone. People came to speak with her, curious and respectful, drawn by the courage of the man who had chosen to see her differently. And through it all, Daniel stayed by her side, never letting her feel like she was anything less than extraordinary. For Emma, the ballroom was no longer a place of silence and shadows. It was the place where she had been given back her voice, her laughter, and her worth. And it all began with one simple question from a single dad who refused to look away.